There's an old phrase that I have been compelled by for many decades called "at play in the fields of the Lord." I always thought it was biblical, but when I looked it up, it's really much more akin to "at labor in the fields of the Lord." Play is something that has been introduced in much more recent time. I like the idea of play because it lightens the equation a little bit, and because most of us find labor to be a negative. It's mostly a negative because of a mindset. It's repetition, its requirement, the demand of it, the constriction of the reward that comes from work, just work. Now, some of us don't have that. Some of us have learned over time that work can become play. And it's a gift, but it's rare. It's really rare. But learning how to play or remembering how to play is a real essential ingredient in how to live your life. There definitely is a component of work, of stuff that has to get done. Support your family, support yourselves, contribute to the global economy, the local economy. Work is really, in many ways, at the center of all of this. But in the beginning, childhood, you don't know that yet. In childhood, you learn to play as an introduction to work. You learn to enjoy being. You learn to enjoy not knowing what comes next. You learn to enjoy getting up in the morning. You learn to enjoy putting things together, helping your mom put stuff in the drawer. Whatever it is, there's something about the moment-to-moment pleasure of play, of just doing, running around, hopping, skipping, jumping. And it gets more complicated. It might be involving learning how to ride a bike, how to draw in a way that makes you feel good. Not about necessarily the product, but just the experience of color and movement on a page. There's so much to learn in the world of play that ultimately begins to move us toward this idea of work. And work in the field of the Lord is probably the most demanding part of our lives. Because if we do not work in the field of the Lord, we don't live a life worth living, usually. You pay a big price for not working. Work can be onerous, it can be difficult, it can be unpleasant, it can be everything you don't want it to be, but that's really, in the end, a mindset. There's something in you attacking the what is of work, the what needs to be done. And how you change that mindset means you have to let go of the strictures of your mind that are so locked into a particular patterning that go, this is good, this is bad, this I like, this I don't like. And when you lock into the negative side of work, you're kind of condemning yourself to a very unhappy life. A dear friend of ours who's passed away, Barbara Buster, had a mother who did factory work her whole life and couldn't wait to get to the factory because the girls were all there. And she would just talk to the girls and they would just work and talk and play. And on occasional nights, they would go out and belly dance. And she was one of the happiest people I had ever met. This woman loved to work. She had an attitude that was so lovely. And yet, what seems to happen for many people, and this goes not only to work, but to your very life itself, this experience of judging it, and then, if you will, feeling sorry for yourself for what your life is asking of you. Feeling sorry for yourself is at the core of human suffering. It didn't give you what you want. It took too much away. It didn't offer all the things you thought you deserved. Whatever the problem is of your life that you are now angry at, that you are now in a hostile mode in dealing with, who is suffering from that? Well, I mean, the answer is obvious. How do you change that? Well, if you don't like what is, where you've arrived at, how you got there, you can begin a blame game. You can look at the whole history of your life and get angry at the totality of your journey. You can get angry at the people who had a hand in your unhappiness, maybe the person you're living with, or people you were part of your growing up. It doesn't matter. Whatever your blame game is, whatever your unhappiness is, it is supported by and reinforced by you. Why? Why? Well, mostly it's a pattern. It's a pattern you seem to have no control over because you never controlled it. You'd have no idea how to control it, really. And I don't mean you specifically, because a lot of you guys have been sitting and doing this particular work for a very long time. And the biggest component of this work, unlike laboring in the fields or working in a factory, the nature of this work is very subtle. It's just sitting back quietly and watching you work, separating from the person who is sitting around being miserable and repetitively unhappy, and just looking at that. It's this tiny little step back. Rudy called it take a breath and observe. And you see the unhappy person. But what's really interesting is that you have this momentary separation of the you and the it. There's this thing that's watching the sadness, the thing that's watching the unfortunate upheaval of your own life, the unfortunate arrival of things you don't want or don't like. There's something watching that. And it really is not in judgment of what's going on. It's really not there in critical form. It's simply, wow. It's a little bit like reading a book. There's you going, oh my God, oh wow, oh, wow. Something terrible is happening to this person. They're going through all this drama. You're feeling it, you're doing it, but you're going, wow. You're watching, you're witnessing, and you always have the capacity to put the book down. Now, a really good book you may put down and it's still with you in the shower and on the toilet and driving somewhere. It's still playing around, but you have the capacity to put it down. You have the capacity to step back from this fiction. And the purpose of what is called a spiritual life or a spiritual practice, a meditative practice, is to become the reader, if you will, of your life. Watch it from a detached distance and go, wow, that's terrible. That's horrible. How did that happen? Oh my God, all this time and they've done this and they've done that. And now that happened. That's not fair. Oh, how are they going to deal with that? Where's that going to go? How is that going to get resolved? That's what we think about people in novels, people in a movie. But in our own lives, we're just in it. No perspective, no distance, no readership, just in it and suffering and feeling sorry for ourselves and wishing it was otherwise and condemning the world for bringing us to this place. But it's never too late to take a breath and go, and just sit back and realize you are the reader of this life. You may be active in it, you may be the participant in it, but you are also a observer of it. And the deeper you go into that observation, the more you begin to realize this thing we've talked about now for literally decades. You begin to realize the life that is happening is a play in the field of the Lord. It's a play, it's a movie, it's a drama, it's a novel. It's a thing you are watching and in some strangely fundamental ways enjoying. And if you are able to go back far enough, you can go, wow, that is a great story. That is a powerful read. But as in all stories, there is this thing from the reader, the observer, wishing for outcome, wishing for resolution, wishing for something to come together that would make you happy at the end of it. A kind of completion, return to what I would call balance and harmony and joy. Somehow having gone through this entire adventure of being and misery and all that stuff, coming out the other end going, wow, that was a good read. I'll tell you what gets you there, to the end of a good story. There's something in the last moments of a story that is a wake-up, a revelation, a understanding, an acceptance, a clarity that shows the whole experience that you've gone through in large enough perspective that the whole thing speaks to you. And if it's a good novel or a good movie, the ending makes you go, wow, that was worth it. That was worth the ride. Whatever it may be, something happens that makes you look at it and go, in a really good novel, I would read that again. I care about those people. I care about that journey. Not all journeys end well, meaning that not everybody gets everything they want, keeps everything they want, has it work out according to their plans. But in the end, what happens? You go, wow, that was a good ride. I saw so much. I learned so much. I cared so much. I cried so much. I laughed so much. That's the nature of a good novel and a good life. And if you wake up to that understanding inside, the whole thing ends well. The middle of this journey involves all sorts of struggle, all sorts of pain and difficulty. The idea of a meditative life is to lessen the dynamic of that, to lighten the load, to help you feel a little bit uplifted in the middle of a really dark and difficult time. If you take a breath and you say thank you, if you take a moment and look outside and you appreciate that the trees are coming into their greenery or their finery or whatever you want to call it, and you go, oh my God, it's rebirth, it's regeneration, it's renewal. And you feel that possibility in yourself. Even if you're having a hard day, that gives you a grace note, a moment of, oh, and take that in, drink it in, because some days that's all you get. Some chapters of a book, all you get is that little bit of something where they realized that ice cream was unbelievable. The whole day came down to that. Other days you get perfection, and they're wonderful. But it's never, ever sustained perfection, because we live in a world of duality. We live in a world of positive, negative, good and evil, light and dark, and they're always intermixing in fascinating ways that keeps us profoundly engaged in the drama. But that drama has one absolute that is in the background of all of our dramas and all of our lives, and that is it's a temporary drama, and that it will come to a close. and that the thing that has been built up, the you, the person, the life, the story, the body, all of that is going to implode into kind of, well, we don't know for sure, but we can call it nothingness, emptiness, fullness, completion, absolute truth. We don't know. But we do know we go on this big journey outward. We're very distracted by it, filled with obligation and need and work and play. And then it comes together into this usually very disharmonious, unhappy, difficult, painful period of dissolution. And then we all go, to the same place, whatever that may be. If you have a life of meditative experience and you go deep into the stillness while all this noise is playing, and you give that stillness some power and some focus, you begin to see it actually has resonance way beyond the daily struggle of your life. It becomes a retreat, a place to go to step away from the slings and arrows of daily outrageous fortune. And you become, by going into that place and finding your relaxation and your harmony, you become someone who can use that to balance out the unhappiness of your day-to-day life. And then you have this thing that allows you to live a life that is harmonically vibrant. The sweet and the dark, the heavy, the light, all of the different elements of it all somehow balance out in a way that really, really satisfies. And you get to that point and you realize that your inner life has balanced out your outer life and you have a whole life. Blanche and I have been watching this documentary on television. Some of you may be watching it as well on Ernest Hemingway. Somehow we missed the first episode, 6 hours long. We came into the second one. And I have to say, within 15 minutes of watching it, I did not like this person at all. And I couldn't figure out why I didn't like him, but he seemed to be a really aggressive, worldly, addicted person. He was angry. He wanted to kill animals. He wanted to like bullfights. He seemed he couldn't. Everything he tried to do, he seemed to figure out had to be done in the world. He wanted fame and recognition, and he got all of this stuff. The world completely gave him his thing, but it was all in the drama of the dream of the worldly form. And I watched his life and all the people around him, and it was really interesting because the thing they all shared was none of them, as far as I could tell, went inward. They all lived outwardly. They all lived for the world to provide the answers, the world to satisfy the needs, the dramas, the things that didn't get worked out in their childhood, the stuff that they were dreaming of. All of it was world stuff. The world stuff doesn't take care of it. It's only half of the equation. The equation really is the outer and the inner. And unless somebody has given you a key to that inner door, unless somebody has introduced you to that inner journey, that you have been, I don't know the word, initiated, I guess, into inner life. Unless you've been initiated, you don't know. And I don't know why initiation happens for some people and not for others. It usually comes through pain and suffering, loss, and people look at it and it opens a door, or it closes a door and they turn into avoiders of life, avoiders of pain, because it's so frightening. But that initiation introduces them to something deeper, and they go inside and they find sustenance, hope, restitution, all the qualities of life that make it worthwhile. The people in the Hemingway story didn't know that. The people in the world I look at mostly don't know that. But I share this with you guys who come here week after week because this is an opportunity to find the balance, to find the inner light that helps shed luminosity on the outer. Sometimes it works better than others. Some of you are going through some very difficult moments right now. I know that. Some really tragically difficult moments, some less tragic but painful. Some of you are not happy. I know that. But this inner light can illuminate the struggle. It can give you some sense of, you can call it light at the end of the tunnel, but really it's just a way of looking at your life and going, wow, this is amazing. What a read. What a great story. What a powerful journey. What we're going through, getting and losing, having and not having, struggle and no struggle. I mean, there's all of this stuff that goes on in all of our stories, and we're all here living our life. But mostly, like Hemingway, people live without any inner illumination. And that is tragic and painful. Painful. You don't want illumination to arrive on your deathbed. Well, maybe you do. Maybe that's how it's programmed. But to have it arrive on your deathbed is to have lived a whole life in darkness, a whole life not knowing that every element of your life, every part of your story, every time you are unhappy in your life, every part of that is illuminated by this inner space that is the witness of, the observer of, the reader of your life. You've got to go deep. You've got to go in. And to give myself my weekly directive, you go in through your mind, through your egocentric space, your heart, your navel gut intuitive space, your sexual restorative rebirthing element, all the way to the base of your spine, and you let all of this depth circulate and then integrate, and you have an inner awareness of the outer form that absolutely helps guide you and sustain you through a life of work in the field of the Lord, a life of play in the field of the Lord. It is a hard dance to do without perspective. It is a lonely dance. It is filled with recrimination and anger and darkness and awful experience. Without that illumination, without that inner vision, without that ability to see the light even in the darkness, it is real suffering. So give yourself permission to go inside, take the breath, ask for help, feel the opening of yourself, and see yourself from a distance that can witness you and enjoy you and know you at the same time that you are the very thing being known. That combination, the story and the storyteller together, is a miraculously exciting and beautiful thing. And my experience, my evolving experience, is a love of life and being and all of the elements in it. And for me, as you know, recent times have been full of very physical discomfort and pain. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. It's hard. But every breath, every hug with my wife, every breakfast, every moment of these days that I'm living are moments of celebration and poignancy. Because we live in a very strange world, a very dark world. We're all aware of its problems, but our moment-to-moment existence is infused with simple joy, grace, and light. Truly, every moment is infused with that. And if you don't feel the infusion, take a breath and go inside and be infused. It's there for you. It is there for you. This is not rocket science. I will tell you one other story and then I'll stop doing all this. But I've been having all this pain in my back and all this stuff. And going to all these doctors, and so many doctors recently. And I've discovered one thing: Western medicine is very good at diagnostics and not very good at treatment. I don't know why that's true, other than surgery and shots and a few things like that. Some manipulation, maybe. It's not great. And once I listen to all these doctors and find it's almost impossible to put together a picture of what really is going on, I entered one doctor, in his office recently, a rheumatologist, and he was so real with me. He's a child of the Holocaust, and he said to me, basically, in a very interesting way, you probably don't need to come to me. You should probably go to someone like Feldenkrais, a Feldenkrais practitioner, which I know about. I've never been to. I've never had a problem with it. I've had a cousin who's been very well served by that world, and I've been approached by some of you to do that. But he was the first doctor I've ever met who said, "I can't help you." And what he said to me is, "I can give you lots of pills, but they will make you a zombie. Don't come to me for that." I've never heard that before from a doctor, but I had told him that's what I've been feeling from so many doctors. They're all ready to take away my pain and make me this strange zombie of a being. So I had an appointment, actually, too many stories here about how it aligned, with a Feldenkrais person 2 days later. And I went there. And this guy did two simple things, and I still don't know where this all leads, and I'm not trying to be a spokesperson for this kind of healing, but he said, first of all, he said, your weak eye is your right eye, and your head is always turned to give it more prominence because your left eye is so strong, it's trying to balance. So you're always twisting to the left, which I suddenly realized was true. And then he said, let's look at a skeleton. When you stand up straight and you thrust your pelvis forward, your whole body rests on the pelvis, which is what it's supposed to do. When you walk around with your head forward, which I've done since I was a kid, because my mother always said, straighten up, your muscle system has to hold your back in place, and it wears down the muscles. And after 78 years, they're in pain. He said, just put your stomach, your pelvis forward, tiny little bit, which I did. And then as I did that, my shoulders fell into place. I have been walking a lot recently and outside because the weather's beautiful, and my back was hurting and my hips were hurting. I walked for 2 days in a row with my pelvis forward. Nothing hurt. Everything was sitting on my pelvis instead of having my muscles hold me erect. I'm not trying to be medical here at all. What I'm trying to say is this tiny adjustment of putting my pelvis forward, subtle, changed so much. It was not a big deal. It was not a life-changing event, except I walked for 2 days with no pain. And I went, oh, it's not, you don't need a surgical operation. You don't need shots in your spine. You don't, I mean, maybe you do, but I'm just saying there are subtle, simple ways of adjusting ourselves that just give us that little tiny piece of information that makes a big difference. Much of that comes from how you live your life, finding your way to the right person to tell you to do it. All I'm saying to you is take a breath, ask for help to surrender. Remember to do that. If you have back pain, try putting your pelvis forward. It's simple adjustments, not massive. The world does not know how to treat all of our complexity. It does not know how to do that. We are too complicated as beings. But the world can help us if we do simple, small adjustments to make it possible to go through the day. And the biggest one of all of them is accept what is. And interestingly, I find in acceptance that my fighting mentality gets quiet, and my inner voice, this inner directive voice, pretty much tells me in that GPS way what to do, where to go, where to turn, how to move. And if I listen and pay attention, like this doctor said, go to a Feldenkrais guy, I had already lined up a Feldenkrais guy. How did that happen? I've been paying attention to the universe. The universe speaks to us. Listen quietly, do what it says, and it will take care of you. It will take care of all of us. That's the little truth that I share with you today. So enjoy playing and working in the field of the Lord, or however you want to look at it, in the great karmic universe that we have somehow inherited and do not understand. Find a simple way to move through it. Work well, play well, observe, be present, witness, be grateful, and live this amazing thing that you are already in and have been in for a good deal of time. Learn to appreciate what it is, because it's what you got. Thank you. I know these are long-winded, but they want to get spoken, so they speak. And I love you guys so much. If anybody has a question, I'm happy to try to answer a question. If not, you're always welcome to call me, write me, and I'm thinking soon of starting classes again in person in New York. So one of the things I will need to know, I don't think I should do it until everybody has been vaccinated. So those of you who are in the New York area who think you would like to start coming to class, maybe in the beginning of May, you should let me know that you're available. And if we have enough people wanting to do it, then we'll start that. And I will figure out what to do about the Zoom classes for those of you who can't make it. So thank you all for coming today. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. I really do send love to you all, and have a great couple of weeks. It's actually going to shift a little bit. Next week, Blanche and I are going to Washington, D.C. to see Ari, and then 2 hours away to see Blanche's sister, Rhoda, who's having an 85th birthday. So I will not teach next Sunday. So everything's getting pushed a week further. So in 2 weeks, I'll be teaching in California. In 3 weeks, I'll be back here. And that may actually get us into May. So we'll have to write about that and figure out what to do. Again, thank you. Love you. Stay well. And don't beat yourself up, okay? It's not worth it.